Hi, and welcome back to the pod. Today we're going to be talking about the future of procurement. We'll be talking a little bit of paddle, and we'll probably talk a little bit about the Premier League as well. So three of my favourite topic areas. And I've got a good friend, Jeremy Smith, with me. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's great to get you on board, and we'll talk about some of the celebrations you've had over the last few weeks on the football side. But Jeremy's the Managing Director of 4C Associates. I think I first met you probably about 20 years ago in the early days of Procurement Leaders, and we have both progressed with our passion of procurement, and you are now leading one of the leading European consultancies. So
it's good times at the minute. Yeah, we're getting the recognition that we probably think we should have been due for a long time, but it's nice to get it now. But it's been a good journey.
So is that 4C or Tottenham?
4C is definitely doing better than Tottenham. But we did win a trophy. In my 46 years on this planet, we've won 3. Actually, no, 4. We have won 4, sorry. But it's been a long time since the last one, and I was starting to think we wouldn't have another one. So it's very nice to have that.
Excellent. And I saw that 4C also got commended on their position as a top consultancy in Europe as well. So fantastic.
Indeed.
So maybe just to give us a bit of a scope of what 4C does. So you're doing a lot of transformational work in the procurement space. You've also been working in the procurement orchestration side. So probably the most hyped and interesting technology that we're talking about there, but maybe a little bit more about the business and what you do.
So we've grown a lot over that period that you sort of refer to, particularly in the last 5 years. Right now we're end to end across procurement and supply chain in the various sectors that we go into. So half our work's public sector, half of it's private sector. Big depth in, I'll give you examples from retail and consumer, that we do that full end to end. So it's not just indirects, it's directs. Where you're going to buy. I'm trying to think of a fluffy toy for Christmas. Where you're going to get that from? Where should it come from? What sort of suppliers? And this is where a lot of the transparency that we talk about on the paddle court comes in, because you need to know where these things are coming. So should you buy it from China? Tariffs. Should you buy it from Turkey or Portugal, or should you even make it here in the UK? And we get involved in that, which a lot of people don't understand. They just think of us as indirect procurement to people, process, systems. So there's that side of it. But there's also the transformation side. So whatever it is that you want to buy or source or move, have you got the people, the process, the systems? Have you got that engagement, the operating model? So we generally do a lot more than people think, which is what we're now doing a lot of the marketing about, to let them know we don't just buy widgets and stuff. We do that too. But we're getting a lot more involved. Mid-market up to the FTSE 100. We are mostly European focused, but we are part of a wider group that has US footprint as well. So we're becoming global.
Yeah, well, I know Pete and Ed from the original days of 4C when I was still wearing my short shorts at Procurement Leaders back in the day as well. So it's great to see the company coming forward. So look, I'm doing a lot around AI. The future of procurement leadership, but also the new operating model for procurement, because things have changed a lot since 2023 when I first kind of dived into this space. Where do you think we are today in terms of the procurement value proposition, and maybe then secondly the procurement operating model? How's that changed in the last 5 years or so?
So I think it's accelerated a lot. We've been talking a long time, procurement professionals, about how we need a seat at the table. Did we really have one before 2020? Some cases, yes, of course we did. In certain sectors, procurement is much more relevant than others. But generally, talking across the piece, not really. And then COVID happened, and then Suez happened, and then the various wars and conflicts happened, and everyone realised how interconnected our supply chains were. And I'm talking supply chain here, less trucks and sheds, more the entirety, which includes procurement, whether it's buying or actual strategic procurement. And people went, oh, do I really know where that's coming from? Am I sure that I'm going to get that? And let's use the PPE as an example. When that was going at its worst, they were diverting flights in midair. People didn't know this, we did, but they were diverting. So the US would just go and pay another $1 more for a mask, and it would just move. Generally, this happened. It would move mid-air over Turkey. It was this particular one, and off it went to the US because they paid more. So as much as you've got people going, was that done well? And no, it was not done well at the time, right? Of course it wasn't. No one's defending it, but it was a little bit the Wild West. And people started to realise, I'm not in control of this. I'm not in control of my supply chain. I am not customer of choice to this supplier. Yes, that was an exceptional set of circumstance. Yes, it was a commodity market, right? But people went, I'm not that important. And a lot of them realised. Another thing that happened at that particular time, which raised the profile of procurement, was that the companies that are profitable are often not the ones who are sat on cash. So when COVID happened, the big companies just shut down and went, right, keeping my cash. The ones who are profitable, the small SMEs, often profitable or not, there's that sort of fluctuation, had no cash. So these supply chains fell apart, and the big companies were like, but hold on, you're really profitable. How come you're falling apart? Got no cash. So there's a lot more understanding now of the interconnectivity of supply chains. Now, when we come onto the operating model piece and digitization of that, is there enough? No, but you've got to start the journey somewhere. So we are now, we being procurement and supply chain, we are now a lot more relevant, a lot more front and centre, which I think is great for the profession. I mean, we in procurement always used to bang on about how, generally I say this with a straight face, it is exciting. Is it the most exciting thing in the world? It can be. It really can be. When you're in the middle of one of those things, like the COVID pandemic and buying PPE, it really was. You were personally invested in getting that stuff because lives counted on it. And there were many, 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 many other examples of that weren't, as exceptionalised as that. And it is an exciting. You're right in the middle. You're the glue that holds businesses together. Now, does that mean everybody should be a CEO of a major FTSE 100 if you've been a CPO? Probably not, right? But they are the glue that holds together operations and finance and the supply chain, because I used to do a lot of consultancy pre-4C at BP. Their external spend is massive, absolutely massive. They won't agree with me when I say this. They are a supplier management company. They're not an engineer. They've outsourced a lot of their engineering. They're a supplier management company. They've got that IP inside, right? But they're managing huge companies, almost as big as BP, probably bigger, some of them. They're a supplier management company. They'll never admit that.
But is that trend not going to escalate? So we'll get onto AI as well. But if we step back from AI, the internal organisations, we have to presume that the AI will, over the next 5 years, be embedded, which either we're going to be moving people from transactional work to more valuable ones, or maybe they don't, when people leave, they just don't bring replacements in there. So it'll be a slightly thinner organisation, but their spend externally will continue to be the same or expand as their revenues grow, which means you've got even more reliance on your suppliers to deliver your profitability as well.
Yes, and again, I would say this, wouldn't I? But I used to be a quantity surveyor, right? That's what I did until I became a consultant in procurement, and they'd do a bit of procurement, right, in quantity surveying, but it's 3 bids and a buy, right? It's very transactional. But they do a huge amount of supplier management. But that supplier management is split between the commercial side and the engineering side. And obviously the engineering side, construction engineers, civil engineers, whoever it was, would be managing and same at BP, will be managing it based on engineering perfection and making sure full risk mitigation and designing serial number 001, because that's what their passion is. And they'd forget about everything else, and prices would increase, and that's why construction projects and other engineering projects have this issue. That model where you split the role of supplier management, I think, is dead, right? You do need both those inputs, 100%, because they both have a different agenda, they both have different outcomes, and procurement, or whatever we're going to call it in the future, because that's something else we probably want to come on to, procurement, supply chain, and all those various names, they, as I say, going back to that glue point, they're the people who can pull it together. So they're the conduit between the business requirement and the supplier delivery. Yeah. I'll even come back to the word supplier, right? Because people use the word partner now. They don't behave in that way, both ways. Buyer and supplier do not behave in partnership at the moment, but it's moving in that direction. I came from an event just before this where they were saying, is competition actually a bad thing? Now, they were suppliers saying that, so they would say that, wouldn't they? However, they had a point that it drives a lot of the issues and inefficiencies that are happening now, and I'll come back to the point around this operate model thing in a minute, comes from the fact that they're not integrated, they're not talking to the right channel, it's driving against each other. So there's a push from buyer and supplier because their objectives are not aligned. And that's where I think procurement's going, that they're going to become that glue, that conduit, and they need better information, they need better insights, they need better transparency from everybody, they need better contracting mechanisms, because at the moment, everybody's contracting mechanism is adversarial. It pushes you apart. Yep. You sign it in excitement at the time, wow, and then you just hate that contract and the terms, because it drives you apart. Everything's binary and everything's blame related. And nobody yet, and lawyers are probably somewhat at fault for this, has come up with a contract mechanism or relationship based. Now, when that all happens and you join it all up, procurement becomes that function that ties together the business requirements. It's an enabler, right? And that's where I go against the fact that should we have a seat at the table? Yes, we should have a seat at the table, but are we the most important person there? No, because the business needs to know what it wants, and we are the ability to link that supply chain, which is getting bigger and bigger and bigger as outsourcing happens, to those business requirements.
Now, we should catch up on the those contracts. I did do some work with Kate Fitzek around the vested framework, and Herman over at DPW, he's implemented some of those as well. So Kate actually reached out to me. So post the event next week, I'm going to catch up with Kate as well, because I think it is coming back to buyer-supplier relationships and how those contracts actually are about a joint path together versus a one-way one. But equally, it's a challenging one when corporates never want to take any blame for the relationship
and risk. Yeah, absolutely. I know why they do it. I completely know why they do it. But it's more that sort of awareness when they go into it of like, if you're saying that you're partnering with your supply chain, but you're actually pushing all the blame and the risk to them, and then not helping them. Yeah. That's why these things fall apart. So I feel sorry for suppliers a lot of the time, says a procurement person. There's your quote, because that's how they're managed.
Seems a great time for someone to have a really good supplier collaboration and innovation platform,
doesn't it? Yeah.
We do a lot of that at Visible. Obviously, it's and doing that, and look, I think this is also where AI can come into the operating model around those. So you talked about the context around the relationships and contracts in the right way of developing the right partnerships in the future. I think in AI can come an important part. I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday, or Matt Ziski, who was on the first podcast. So he's former head of procurement at Airbnb and now been investing in this space. And actually, if you looked at the procurement operating model today, so I guess a question here for you: if you were to start with a blank piece of paper, you don't have any of the old stuff there, and you were to write down and think about people, process, technology, and maybe agents, it'd be very different in the way you would structure that operating model today, and then we only can think about in 2030. But where do you think the big shifts would be when you look at let's look at category management? Where would you start with category management?
So I'll start with people. The people need to be adding value to the business, and this is where the blank sheet of paper allows me to say lots of nice things, and the reality of it is very difficult because of legacy issues. But they need to be adding value to the business. So what do you need from this product, this solution, this piece? And they're going to go, right, it's a supplier, make buy. You're having the make buy conversations. You're having those strategic conversations around business support, right? So that's where they need to be. That they're doing. All the other stuff, running tenders, doing market research, doing data analytics, that is where digitization should take over. Whether it's AI or not, yes, it will be. It will be when the data is better and when the business allows it. So going back to a blank sheet of paper, in a business that goes, I really want help, automate. That piece should be automated, and running tenders, it's already somewhat automated now. It's not as automated as it should be, but it's somewhat automated. And as AI and better data management, as we'll come on to sort of my view of AI in a bit, better data management, and you go, well, I've done this before. Yes, it wasn't exactly the same thing, but here's 80% of it. Let's just start there, speed ourselves up, get ourselves better value, so that the strategic advice that you're providing to your business is the value that they get. They don't care about the mechanism that you go to market. And yes, there are times that you do need to do a lot more in that space, and I'm generalizing massively with what I'm saying here, but that's that sort of model and that role. So the process, going back to orchestration, it needs to be as light touch as possible. Make it easy. Right, again, the business doesn't care about frameworks you put in place, catalogs. They just want to get whatever it is they want. Right, the mechanism they get it needs to be as easy to consume as possible. And if you can do that, you're not only going sort of away to your almost the brownfield answer now rather than the greenfield. That's how the procurement needs to deal with some of the legacy issues about bureaucracy and blockers, right? And that's what orchestration is doing. Yeah, it's channel management by another name. If I'm honest about it, it's just better.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe that my question actually is, I'm not sure when we started thinking about the back office, the middle office, and front office, but there was a managed service running this part, and then we had the middle office and then dealing with the front office. But the back office could now be agents. So it's a managed service run by agents more effectively, and then you're looking at the middle office and the front office. But ultimately, it's going to be the people and the partnerships and delivering that the value, which is the core part of where procurement needs to move.
Back office, completely agree that all that stuff that shared service centres try to do and can do, that's mostly automatable, if that's a word. Front office, yes, that's the business partnering bit I'm talking about, and linking and being that business conduit. Middle office, don't know where that'll end up, if I'm honest. There's bits that need to still be human. There's that insight, that thought, that innovation. There is elements of it that still sit in that middle office. But supplier management, let's use that as an example from the category management point of view. Relationships are still key, right? That ability to talk and translate. But the stats, the information can be automated, right? That can come to you if you've got the processes set up in the background to give you consistent, reliable information. Going to the AI point, and any digitization doesn't have to be AI. That trust in the data is where those things fall over. That's not the system's fault. That's the processor's fault, and that's the data's fault. And that's why my view is probably a little bit. Am I supportive of AI? Yes. Do I think it's going to become relevant in a few years? I'm 100% right. And anybody who's not looking at it now will be left behind completely on that. But a lot of the people who are talking about AI now are talking about what they're going to be doing in a few years, pretending they're doing it now. And that's slightly what bothers me, because I know that some of these companies that we work with or have talked to have got shocking data. You put AI in that, you're just going to get the same outcome.
Well, Vaporware is the biggest selling SaaS solution out there. It has been for a long time. So there are always promises coming through.
Indeed.
And the bigger providers have bigger promises.
Indeed. But using data, whether that's external data, internal data, better, which is what AI enables, right? Yes, you've got to do that. And then that's where these efficiencies come. And it will allow procurement to elevate itself.
Yeah, and look, AI is a very broad term, very broad term. And I think what we've come into the stages now of agentic workflows. So we can think about the outcome that we want, and then we have agentic workflows to get there. And then agents, which are somewhat autonomous and taking decisions. And I think we need to separate some of these out. Now, we had automation before, which with LLM sitting on top of it can be smarter automation in terms of agentic workflows and can do a lot more than they used to. But the AI label being put onto a SaaS platform or anything, but a quality of data. And I think that's where the current providers have that depth of data and knowledge, where actually putting agents on top of agentic workflows on top of it, and then potentially agents is where they're going to be able to have a big boost. But also the true AI native companies, which I think have been developed in the last 18 months, are the true AI native. And actually there's something fundamentally different about them, because they're AI native internally.
Yes.
Which means they're not going to be a 400-person organization.
No.
They may well be a 20-person organization, and everything they do is augmented with AI. And that's going to be a very different buying decision for a procurement team to say, actually, this solution can deliver a lot of value, but we're not going to be able to go to San Francisco and see 400 people sitting in an office. We're not going to see a series A, B, C, D, and F. And they're going to have to buy in a very different way.
It's a mindset change that's required, because, and this applies, I mean, look, we're an SME, right, in what we do. We fight against the big four and all of those, right? They're huge, right? And there is that famous saying, which gets changed from McKinsey to IBM, whoever you want to use, right? I mean, no one ever got fired for hiring these people, because they got the brand, that got that, sheer weight of numbers is literally what they trade off. They obviously also have experience and knowledge and data as well. And we're not that. We're smaller. We're more agile. We're a bit upstarty, but we're deeper in these areas. And sometimes we run into this as a consultancy ourselves, because there is that resistance that going back to that blame from the contractual point of view, that fear, too much governance, too much rigidity in this. And this is procurement's fault. Don't get me wrong. That procurement processes drive this, or it's the governance rather than processes, but drive this. However, if you want to innovate and if you want to grow, whatever size you are, whether you're Heineken or whether you're an upstart in any other space in that FMCG supply chain, you have to take risks. And these are not risks really, because a lot of these things get piloted. So yes, you might waste money because, but that's how you find these things out and you learn from it. So I think people are more willing to do it. Obviously, a lot of the ones that do work get swallowed up by these companies that are bigger, have the data,
sure,
have the processes, so eventually they get there. But if you wait till they get swallowed up, then you're behind, and your competitor may have done it. So the different sectors we work in have different approaches to that risk. Will you see the public sector, central government taking a risk on a small upstart from, Warrington? Probably not. But will you see an FMCG company or a pharma company doing it? Yeah, I think you will. They're taking more risk. They have these sandboxes in which they play in, and they'll take more risk. And if they get ahead, fantastic.
Well, I'd hope that the central government would, because it's all about growth in the UK economy, and we should be doing it in that way. And should be, but they won't, obviously.
Yeah.
But this is a challenge.
Yeah.
We seem to be quite reliant on large US companies for our tech stack. Now, look, NVIDIA is sitting behind all the AI.
Yeah.
So if we look at risk in the supply chain, and where we should,
or your alternative is China, so there's some more risk for you.
Yeah, so it's an interesting part of where the risk and all these things are. But no, it is fascinating. I think that the point of also being a innovator in certain areas and being a fast follower is key. But the procurement orchestration is definitely one of the themes there, and you can see why it's the promise of what some of the suite providers have given us in the past. But again, back to your point, it's all down to the quality of the data and also the processes that you're going to put into the orchestration layer as well. So you're working with companies on that whole
Absolutely,
part.
yeah. We do quite a lot of it because for me, the point of the orchestration companies is they make it easy to consume, but crap in, crap out, if I can say that. If you put your crap processes and data into a very good system, it's still not going to work. Yeah. So we help them. I mean, obviously the benefit of, as you say, channel management was what it used to be, but channel management was clunky and slow and difficult to set up, and usually came from Ariba and therefore was over complex, right? You've now got Zip and Oro and the others who do it very, very easily. It's not quite off the shelf, out the box, but it really is very close. And we go into that and help them tweak it, because what they can do, companies, is ruin that ability to deploy it quickly and to use it easily, by overcomplicating the process behind it. Because really what you've got at the back of it is, here's a supplier that this process route ends with, and it automates it out, right? If you do your procurement right, that's that supplier, that route takes you there. The buyer doesn't necessarily care. If they have an opinion about who the supplier is, and they have a valid opinion, then maybe it's not through that route. But then it takes it through that route and says, actually, you need to talk to a human being about this. So it's for me, that is absolutely an example where the tech is very useful, because it helps procurement become valuable to the business and allows procurement to do more because it's just easy to consume. We can thank Amazon. A lot of people don't like Amazon for sort of what they stand for and the sheer size of them, right? But I use them all the time because it's easy to do and it turns up, and that's exactly what orchestration is trying to do. Yeah,
I think I think about the number of users that are actually going to be touching those requests and authorizations as well, or being able to onboard a supplier seamlessly as well. It's tough. I mean, working with corporates on being onboarded, as you all know, is a very tricky process. So if we can streamline that and get some speed back into it. I mean, DocuSign, I think, is the biggest innovation that we've had in the last 20 years in procurement technology.
So easy.
And it's a win-win-win for everyone, procurement, the business, and for the supplier. So I think, I think the interface, making it simple, is there. I don't know how DocuSign aren't owning the contract management side, because it seemed it was purely in their shape for it, but I'm sure they'll come back with a solution on that side. So procurement orchestration, I mean, I do think it's maybe at peak hype at the moment. It does seem that the large enterprise customers are all starting to look at it. I think they're all scratching their head as well, because they also have some sort of suite in there as well, and it's whether or not it's an additional cost versus a replacement. So that makes a hard conversation with the CFO, but it definitely adds some more value on there. What other technology are you seeing coming through? Is there new technology that's hitting multiple of your customers, or you see big opportunities?
I wouldn't. So nothing that I'm going to say, the buzz is about that. I agree with you that the main thing at the moment is orchestration, right? Intake and orchestration, right? That seems to be what most people talk to us about, because you do so and so. That with Zip is our one, but with whoever, yeah, we do, and they're still getting to that because they've heard about it for the last 18 months, well, more than that, right? But the hype's been going for about 18 months now, and as you say, it's at peak. Everything else that's being tested out there is a form of AI, right? And I say AI, but some tool that is being put there to give you efficiencies, right? It's not necessarily procure tech, I would say. It's some tool that sits either in that S2P or P2P or whatever combination of letters you want to use. Or even, take consultancy, how to automate our process and our efficiencies, right? All these areas. So, but that's not one category, and it's in that sort of generic category of AI. Yeah. So, which I think is probably part of the problem. That's a little bit of the cynicism around AI and people waiting to be, which ones work, which ones am I going to invest time in. If there is an area that I would say people are talking to us more about, that we've been banging our heads against a brick wall for about 5 years on, is transparency of the supply chain. Is there a good solution out there yet? No. Are some coming? Yes, I think they are. And this has nothing to do with the tech providers themselves, right? This is the complexity of the data and back to the contractual mechanisms, which, can you see your tier one very well these days? Yes. There are many tools out there that do it. Can you see your tier two getting there, right? And that's because the power position between the tier one and the tier two is usually strong enough to say, you will give us this data as part of our back-to-back agreement with our supply. When you get down below tier two, it's a mess, right? And it's a complex mess, right? It generally is. That's not a mess because someone's cocked it up. It's a mess because it's very complex. You might be going to a farmer in Thailand at tier three. You might be going to a tiny little company that's got no processes and systems because they're learning. They're a startup or they're from a developing nation. So when you suddenly start talking, and this is when blockchain, I'm going back in time now, when blockchain was going to solve the world's problems, well, in theory, yes, but are they going to use blockchain? No, they're not. So it falls apart at that point. Now, I understand why. I'm not blaming anyone. But that transparency is coming. There are systems out there, because a lot of the big data mining systems used to claim they could do this, but they couldn't.
I do think there's an opportunity, a combination of AI and blockchain. I guess we would put those as Web3, but that those systems also have to have a whole economy based on them, and I think that's where some large tech companies will take blockchain and say we're now at the front and center of it, but they also putting a product out that they own and license as you would as a relational database, versus using blockchain, which should be a distributed model.
Yes.
And make sure that it can go. So it's going to be fascinating. I think AI can help drive blockchain solutions in the future, but also if it's not distributed, I'm not sure why anyone's backing a fully owned solution, because you may as well have a relational database to all intents.
And this is the problem. And I understand why it is the problem, but it's definitely gone from, let's go back 15 years where you didn't know your tier ones. Now we know our tier ones very well, probably too well in some circumstances. You're looking at your tier twos and you're getting there, right? Whoever cracks that thing in a way, using the data and making it not quite free to market, but in a way that's low cost to those suppliers, you'll have such great transparency of the supply chains. And I'm not saying to use for or against any of those suppliers. Yeah. It's got to be, and going back to that partnering point, it's got to be a natural win-win for everybody throughout that supply chain. But won't have COVID-related problems of going, that supplier over there, that's my most important supplier. I had no idea they even existed. Now people know they exist, but haven't got the time, bandwidth, or data to do anything about it, and that's coming, right? And it's not there yet. I think we're still 3 or 4 years away, but I think it's coming. We just got to hope that one of these technology solutions starts to stick. And whether they've got the guts to go, we need to make this free and invest in that way. I say free, but easy to consume, because then they got that data and
Distributed, but I don't think it should be owned by any one company. But we're not seeing that work in most places. No. So someone at the top's there. But I think we need to find a distributed approach to it, and that's just reducing the cost of companies doing good.
Yeah,
I guess is what we want, and then people can build on that basis versus everyone having to do it. If we look at third-party risk, the cost around that, the cost on the sustainability profiling, it's just adding up to every corporate and every SME that now having to do it.
With the existing contractual mechanisms of blame, right? That risk in a collaboration is managed by both parties, and therefore is diminished. Yeah. That risk, when it's like, that's your risk, can always be magnified by that approach, right? And then it becomes a problem, and it wastes, it creates inefficiency. Yeah. Now that people know, whether they do anything about it is another matter, but they know that they're interconnected and they are as dependent on that supplier wherever they are, that the last supplier in your chain is as important as your big tier one, who you manage quite a lot now. They might start going, this is collaboration, this is integration, and the efficiencies come. So lean is still relevant. Lean that was from the late 90s, whenever it was, is still relevant.
Yeah.
Madness.
Well, I think we're going to see more of that coming through. I think also, look, I do think, keep coming back to AI. I'm getting ready for my presentation next week, but I think looking at processes and looking at the outcomes, because I think sometimes we've been optimizing the process versus trying to focus on how we deliver the outcome, and changing that thought around is there as well. The value proposition, I agree with you, in the last 5 years it's changed. I think COVID was the flip of it, but we also needed to see how we make that shift to the new value proposition. We're always going to need to have the savings. Now, maybe last year and the year before, we also had to look at scope 3 and some other balance, and it seems with changing priorities, the sustainability side has been put to one side for a while, but I think the broader part of helping the growth of the organisation, transforming it to the new product lines as well, but also like the AI side is going to touch every part of the business and probably every part of every supplier. How does procurement become an expert? Now, you'd say, why does procurement need to be an expert? Because everything you're buying has just changed. Have you seen anyone take a lead on that? Because there needs to be some sort of excellence around understanding the cost base.
So no, I haven't seen anyone take the lead on it, but that doesn't mean they're not out there. It just means probably I'm not seeing it. It is changing what people buy, right? And it's an existential threat to a lot of industries. Legal, take legal. I mean, legal's probably the one that's easiest to sort of visualize and go, well, it's a lot of case law by its almost definition is there's a case somewhere that's the answer, right? So you can find that. AI can just go and find that. Now you've got lots of paralegals leafing through books and doing it, right? That's there. You just got to put it into a digital database, and AI will do that. Of course, humans still need to do the so what. Of course they will, right? So that's changing the consumption of legal services. Now that is already happening. It's not to its scary point that where's your succession planning for the next set of lawyers, because that's the other thing that AI needs to think about, that people see as a threat to their jobs. No, people still need to come through, and we have it in consultancy, right? Because in consultancy you have analysts, right? Yeah, your analysts do what they say on the tin at that stage, right? But ultimately what they are is junior trainee consultants, and then consultants become consultants and become directors and partners and so on and so forth, right? So it's all part of a succession plan. Now, the bit that you can automate in consultancy, back to legal, is that analytics part, is that processing part, right? And that's what they typically do to learn the basics. So how are we going to create, the next partners of the future when they've skipped that stage? Because now this is where it comes in. That's very interesting, because I'm applying how I grew up to the modern generation, right? They are well ahead of me in how to use AI, right? And that's what they're going to do. They're going to work out how to do maybe not even the same job in the future, because the job's changed. Even my job will have changed in the future, right? They'll work that out, and I think people are testing it. So my cynicism about AI today, not AI in the future, AI today, is that a lot of people are sandboxing it and claiming they're doing more, right? But they are sandboxing and they are testing it, and procurement have to be involved, because people have realised that those supply chains, as a consequence of whatever that AI does, is going to change. So where am I going to get my saving from? AI is going to be a saving. Is it going to be a headcount saving internally, or is it actually a supply chain saving? Or is it actually just we're going to grow more? We're going to keep the capacity, and we're going to grow more. We're going to do it better. We're going to do it better for the planet, because that's the other thing.
Yeah, well, there's some processing power that's coming on those NVIDIA chips that are sitting behind all the models there as well. I guess the other part is, look, there's some people dabbling on ChatGPT in their own, or Anthropic, or however Microsoft present the part in Copilot. And an individual interacting with an LLM is only good as the individual and the prompts and the data and everything there. And that, it comes back to core and context. So we're going to have IT teams now, and they're going to be told that, we can use the OpenAI models, and we can build this on the Microsoft platform and so forth. And as IT teams sometimes do, Microsoft Access was my playground in the late 90s as well. I could build systems and databases there. They'll build kingdoms, because quite often they do want to help the business.
Yep.
But ultimately, it's a question of core and context. Should rarely be looking at how we bring new products to market and delight our customers and consumers. And that's where we should probably using the AI to transform that. The systems that run HR and procurement and supply chain, there's probably someone externally who have got more funds, more focus, and more probably depth of knowledge to build systems that can scale, be more predictable, and also continue to add value year on year, than trying to build it yourself.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying that there aren't great developers in large corporates, but it's a risk in terms of building these things in the future for people. But it is easy, and getting prototypes is super simple. Putting things into production, and especially with the speed of the models coming through, is going to take time. And I think it's a different mindset if internal engineering teams are doing this. Amazon, Google, all right, slightly different, yeah. But I think if you're a large kind of FTSE non-tech company, I'm not sure if you're building it yourself.
Indeed, and I mean, I'm leaving out our sister company Anvil, because they're doing some of this stuff themselves, right? But I'm going to use 4C Associates as an example here, because we did quite a lot of testing of how to deploy AI, and the examples you're using here, Copilot, Bing, ChatGPT, Gemini now, all these ones that are provided by big entities. And we did a lot of testing about 18 months, maybe longer ago, 2 years ago. Lots of testing on it. Now, first of all, scares the hell out of legal, right? Because it's not our data. We could not, because of contracts we've signed, and neither should we, put one of our clients' contracts into there to say, can you please summarize this? No, because it goes out. I know they tell you it doesn't, but no one believes it yet, and you're just feeding someone else's data, so you can't do it, right? So most of our clients won't let us do it. So they want AI enablement, but they won't let you do it. And this is that sort of inertia we're at the moment.
Well, they are probably using Microsoft Day-to-Day, which has a AI Copilot on there.
Yep, exactly. So it's seeing it's seeing everything, indeed. And that's the point. And yes, Microsoft will tell you, no, it's in your own little area, but really, then what are you telling us about all the other AI that's coming? Now, we did test it, and it's great in certain circumstances, but God, it's inaccurate. Right, and you find these cases now where lawyers have used it and they've taken the wrong case law. And I would say daily we find it going, but that's not right. It's just because the data's old, right? And as you say, it's being refreshed a lot, and it's using, I don't know, I think we're beyond the late 90s data now, but we're probably, I don't know where we are, but we're probably in the teens probably with the data it's using. Okay, so it's catching up rapidly, and will it get better? Now, the problem is the inertia that we've got at the moment for big corporates going, oh yeah, I'll use everyone else's data, but you can't have mine. Might suddenly have a bit of a bump when we get there, but it is coming. I'll try and think of some examples, right?
There should be a solution to that. I mean, if you have your system set up in a way that you can sandbox customers' data, but also if they give you their API key, it's then their data sandbox, which they'll give you documents anyway.
Yeah.
So if they're giving you documents, it's in the same security, and they give you their API key, which is a very easy process for them. And I think this is where corporates are going to have to, you bring your own key to the systems. Then it is within their safe house. And if OpenAI or Microsoft are saying it's in the same safe house as you have, and it's all secure, then it should be okay for you then to evaluate that contract in the right way.
In theory, yes. But I say a lot of the contracts we have with our clients say you can't use AI yet. As much as they're then up on stage telling us all about the AI they're using, they're telling you that you can't use AI on this. The government say you can't use AI for bid writing. Or if you do, you've got to tell us. When they're the ones who are saying, we're going to be the home of AI. Right, so there's a lot of this sort of after you sort of issues. Now, we are using it. We do use AI quite a lot, but it's still, existential crisis for lawyers, stuff like that. Is it coming for consultants? Some of it, right? What we really have is IP, and this is where the big four, they are building their own internal agents of their own data, right? They are doing that because it's their data. It's not their clients, it's their data. So they're going, every project they've ever done, putting it into one big, pit and playing with it, and that will be very useful, right?
I mean, you can also bring it in. So Mistral, the French one, you can bring that open source model in. You can bring down the Meta ones as well, and you can hone those internally, which I think is the safest way to do it. I mean, I've got DeepSeek on one of my computers, so I don't use the browser-based one, but to have the quality of that, being able to do deep research on your own computer, and the safety of your own computer is there as well. So I also think tiny models are really interesting about doing processes within your own organization. So that it can be safe.
I completely agree. I just think it's almost paradoxical that the companies that are talking about doing all this stuff are like, but with everyone else's data, not ours. And then all it's sort of doing is hindering the evolution of them, because these data sets are then going to be imperfect. Not forever. They'll catch up, right? We know they will. But it's just.
Well, we should probably move on a little bit, but I think the other thing to look at, and I think it's a trend there, is the MCP servers now. So we've based a lot of our stuff on RESTful APIs over the years, and I remember the days back on XML. I was working on the HR XML framework back in the late 90s, early 2000. But we're now moving to MCP servers, where an agent can just hit a server and it will do whatever it wants to do in that system without having to program everything in. So it's going to be fascinating how MCP servers change the enterprise, but also how the solutions sit around it as well.
The theory behind it is fascinating and almost exciting, I would say, what it can do. It's just we've all seen Terminator. We know how it ends. But it's like, what can it do and what should it do? And I say the opportunity to automate, to get insight, to do better decisions, back to where we started, give value to the business, because you know your data, you got your data set, and you can just send these agents out and bots out and go, do this for me, and it comes back and bloody hell, it has. And it's coming. It's definitely coming. And I say whilst I'm cynical about the capability of AI here today, I am not cynical about what it's going to be doing in 2 years. And if you don't start now, you will be left behind.
Yeah, but I think also, this is the interesting part about the use cases, and it is powerful to build a prototype. But, again, let's say a consultancy starts using it. Well, is that system ISO 2001? Do you have SOC 2 compliance? Now, if you're you're providing a system in production, you would have to have those standards. But when you start building it in-house as part of your consultancy, you're probably not saying, all right, we need to be ISO 2001, but you're actually now creating a platform for doing the knowledge.
Eventually we'll need
so I think, again, are you a tech platform or are you a consultancy? This is where the part. So, corporates have been readily taking SaaS solutions on ISO 2001 or the penetration testing, security side. So I think this is where we need to look at the borderlines if you're a software company as well. But I do think the consultancy world is going to flip fairly quickly. I think there's a few consultancies come through and address that kind of business analyst role. And I don't know your day rates, but let's say BAs, I remember when I joined the first tech company, I was doing some project management and I was being charged at £1,000 a day, which was extortionate against the salary I was having. But there's a lot of people getting billed out in large consultancies at £1,000 a day. I think what we're seeing is a reverse model now, where you get top-heavy, experienced people. You also then have the next level down, but the bottom of the triangle, maybe this is where the younger people are coming in. Not that we had a conversation before. It's curiosity, and I don't think age has anything to do with curiosity around using AI and solving problems, because that's what we've been doing all our careers. But we'll have a team of engineers who are looking at supporting the more senior people in terms of delivering that value to the customers. I think that may be where we're getting the graduates in. I mean, my daughter's doing computer science, which I thought was a very clever thing to do. Now, if you look at the automation and agentic side, although it may not be in full production now, I think it's the part of, and that's the exciting part, you can now really solve problems with the AI, and that's only going to scale over a period of time. But it's going to be fascinating to see how consultancy change, because I think if I was a large corporate and getting, I think I saw, won't name the consultancy, but they had the results out recently. The numbers are up, but they're also boasting about how much AI they're using in the organisation. It's like, right, I'm spending X million with this very well-branded consultancy, highest profitability ever, and they're also pushing how much they're using AI. Maybe those day rates aren't what we want, and there's going to be negotiation from that as well.
So that's coming. And so knowing what I know, I bet they're not using AI as much as they're saying they are. However, when you're going to say that, expect that statement to come back at you when you're negotiating your day rates. Because if you're doing that, 30% of your work is now AI enabled, why is your rate still the same? Now, I know what they'll do. They'll argue IP, experience and things like that. We go, but I don't need as many. Some of it, the analytical part of it, or the repetitive processing part of it, which is part of most projects. Take a PMO and governance project. There's a lot of just regular reporting. Slides can be written for you now. Just set up your trackers and just write that. It's all automated for you now. You don't need tribes of 20-somethings running around chasing data anymore. So that should come off your total resource pot. Yes, you then need to add back for the systems, you need to add back for the experience, and if you're data enabled, if you are automating that through your own data and insight, well, you should be paying for that as well. But there is something coming. But we've got this going on at the moment. This is a question that I deal with, I won't say weekly, but it's probably coming that around, where can we do this? Because we've got to future-proof ourselves. What is coming? And the slight problem, and it's great from our point of view, is what we do at the moment is not regular and repeatable. It's lots of bespoke one-off projects here and there. Yes, it's running the same sort of approach, and eventually something will come, but it's not we're not a tender shop, right? We're not doing that. Whereas someone like a GP or a Wipro or a Tata, who are running back office tender shops, they are going to have to change their business model, how they charge, and the customer's going to be saying, I want this. I expect AI, but I also expect not to be paying for bums on seats anymore. So it's got to change. So we're not there yet, but we're not naive enough to know it's not coming for us. So we're looking at it now. But it does require that piece. And what I will say is, because I worry about it from a succession planning point of view as well, where are the next crop coming from? Because somewhere you've got to get a consultant who's learnt stakeholder management. That's the key skill to a consultant, is that ability to influence, build trust, get things done. And if you don't know the basics, having witnessed it in a safe space because you're protected by someone else, because it's now a system, where do these people come from? Now, yes, they will come out and they'll be brilliant at writing prompts and they'll be able to automate that stuff, but that's not succession planning for a consultant. That's just enablement that helps us do it, but that's not succession planning. So it's like, and I don't have the answer yet. It's like, what is going to happen? We just got to stay close to it, because that is the future. I'd probably say that on every podcast. Detlev Schultz told me 8-10 years ago, the jobs your kids are going to have haven't been invented yet, and we're in that part. And wherever there's a major change in technology, it's the AI revolution that we're in now, there will be new jobs. I mean, we used to type out letters and print everything out, and things have changed. I used to photocopy a lot.
So things do change. I think it's just going to be interesting to see how the procurement function embraces it as well. In terms of the value proposition, has it really changed on what the procurement, the CPO is now talking about? You talked about transparency. We've talked about that buying experience for the business, which has always been a pain for the business. I think maybe orchestration is going to solve that. But are we seeing sustainability started coming to the value proposition. I think we still need to monitor that as part of a risk profile, but are we seeing other key KPIs coming in?
I would say the activities we're doing are generally the same, right? The prioritization of it has changed, yes. Right, the prioritization has definitely changed. So is it still cost focused? Somewhat, but that is now more sort of efficiency led. Risk and resilience, much more, right? And you can package that up in many different ways. Transparency, understanding, because ultimately they want to know that their goods or services are going to turn up. Relationships still there. ESG is still there. It is. You're right. It's taken a little bit of a backseat because there's turmoil, but it is still there. Yeah. But what we're trying to do now, we as in the procurement function and community, is balance all of those things. So it should never be one thing that's leading it. It should be many others. I don't think anything's changing, but there's a lot of agility required and a lot of adaptability required to make sure that, if Donald Trump wakes up tomorrow and sends down another decree, that we're ready to whatever that might be. But still, it's the same things we're doing. We're managing suppliers, we're managing the business needs, and we're trying to do it as best we can.
And capabilities, we should start thinking people, process, technology, and technology now includes agents, so that's part of our capability side, and we just have to blend that in as the things mature.
Absolutely, yes, but I just think we're problem solvers. That's what we've always been. I think we just need to sort of almost be proud of it, that we fix that problem, whether it is a process solution, whether it is actually a relationship solution, whether it's a contracting solution, whether it's category management, sourcing, tendering, whatever it might be. We've got all these tools in our toolbox, and yes, it's changing, and ultimately it's down to relationships and building relationships and getting trust and delivering outcomes. Whether you use AI to do it or whether you use paper and pen and a phone, I don't know. Whatever you do to get it done, you'll get done. M&S have been doing it from spreadsheets for the last few months now, and I think it's phenomenal what they've done. Absolutely phenomenal. So they've adapted, and honestly, good luck to them. I think it's fantastic that they've shown that you can do it, but they've also been resilient, and I think that's the main thing. That resilience, that relationship building and understanding. So long as we keep that, how it gets done.
Again, it's the outcome, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're looking at.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, look, Jeremy, thank you very much for coming on the pod. I would love you to come back maybe in 3 months' time, because I'm a little bit more optimistic things are going to move more quickly. Yeah. So maybe we can have a bit of a tester in terms of how things have got moved forward with some AI. But again, you can report back what you're seeing from your side. Yeah. I'll see you on the paddle court very soon.
Indeed. Yeah.
And thank you very much for coming.
Enjoy the US.
Thank you very much. Cheers.